encourage them to be open with you as a parent, because I found that only when I was able to ask my child every day, how was your day?
Yeah.
What was good about your day? What was not good about your day? Not just what happened.
Yeah.
That is too broad. You need to be specific in your questions.
Welcome back, Parent-to-Parent Discussion. Wow. My name is thozi.theko. It's an exciting one. Today we have a guest, and if you remember, parents, we are looking at what happens at school. Now, the guest we have wears several hats. Jenny Morrison is a parent herself, and we'll be talking from that perspective to you fellow parents. A special education qualification she has, which makes her a specialist in that field also, and an entrepreneur who brought music and movement into schools. So there's richness in this, what we're going to hear today. So, welcome, Jenny. Welcome, Jenny. It's so lovely to have you.
It's a blessing
today.
to be here.
Yeah. And you can say hello to our viewers. But I just want to say to them, you wear several hats. And so in your introduction, if you can tell them who you are.
Well, my name is Jennifer Morrison. I am a parent to a boy and a girl who are now adults. We fostered a child for a few years also, and I've been an educator for many decades. That's been my passion. And in my education, I also decided to specialize in special needs, special education, because there's a huge need for the children who are left behind. And I feel that is very important.
Okay. That's exactly what I want us to talk about. What does it entail, special needs education?
Special needs education is when a child is lagging behind in some developmental area.
Right.
Okay. So as a parent, that often causes a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. My child is different. I don't know how to cope with that. Right. And a lot of parents also then tend to ignore that. They try and push it away and say, not my child.
Yeah.
My child's fine.
Yeah.
So as a parent, I understand those kinds of anxieties and feelings, because when your child is born, you want them to be okay.
Yeah.
From the minute they're born, you want them to be happy and safe and okay.
Right.
And so often as parents, we either go to the extreme of seeing problems where there aren't any.
Right.
And other times we will then ignore problems where they are.
Right.
And that's where we need to be observing our children, watching them, being the parent who is with our child, seeing where they are at that stage.
Exactly. You've touched on what parents tend to do. I want you to talk more about what do you want? What do special needs educators want parents to know? We're having a discussion, parent-to-parent discussion. This is about equipping us so that we can support our children throughout, so that we can avoid school dropouts, because things tend to catch up with children, especially at the time when they can make their own decision, which is a teenagehood, and then they drop out, really. But would you say problems, if there is, starts earlier?
Oh, yes.
You mentioned paying attention. What is it that special needs educators want children to know, but maybe schools generally would want parents to know. Because sometimes we are called to schools as parents, come and meet my child's teacher, and we avoid that.
Yes.
So give us your professional perspective on that.
Our schooling system has a school readiness skill set.
Yeah.
And that is the first sort of skill set that we look for to see if a child is school ready. Right. In other words, are they mature enough to make decisions in that school environment? Mm-hmm. What are their social development skills like? What are their emotional development skills like? What are their cognitive skills, their language skills? All those skills need to be developing for a child to be school ready. So as a parent, if you see your child is delayed in one of those areas, in other words, if a child is not running when they are about to go to school, which is 5 or 6, they struggle to run, or they struggle to speak, or they struggle to hear properly, or they struggle in some of those areas, that means that there is something there that we need to investigate. And a parent mustn't leave it till late, because the first 7 years of a child's life are imperative to be able to help that child to overcome those obstacles.
It's very interesting that you start talking about those basic skills that allow a child to be ready in school. This whole discussion, this parent-to-parent discussion, was born out of those concerns. The program itself was born out of this booklet, where there's understanding of your child, the will phase, the doing phase, and the feeling phase, and the adolescence, which is the thinking phase. You are referring to that early stage, the doing phase, the will phase. And on the third chapter of this booklet, and it's a small book to assist parents in saying, readiness means that your child hears and understands certain things.
Yes.
Your child can remember certain things when the child is ready for school. Your child is flexible, is moving, is touching, is grabbing, is running, is climbing.
Yes.
Right? And yet your child can also begin to tie their shoelaces or work with fine motor skills.
That's right.
These are things that as parent, we didn't know we needed to observe those things. And we are good at observing children when they were babies.
Yes.
When they're still crawling in our kitchen, on our kitchen floor, we're observing. Oh my goodness, we get excited.
Yeah.
Why do you think we stop paying attention when we have taken the child to school?
We try and put that responsibility on the teacher. I think often parents feel inadequate.
Yeah.
They don't feel they're skilled enough, and because the educator has gone to study this field, they are the experts.
Right.
But as parents, we know our children best. So we mustn't give up that. Yeah. We must definitely go and work with the teacher, with the educators, to see what is best for our child, and not hand over that power to them. Because they have 40 in a class. They can't be the parent.
Yeah.
They have to be the teacher. You are the parent. Be the parent to your child. That is what's important.
What I've come to know, Jenny, is that, yes, the teacher is professionally trained and prepares a lesson in the subject. They teach that. And then, so they impart that knowledge. The learning happens by the child taking in that knowledge, right? And then the teacher takes in the next role, which is to observe if learning has happened, right?
Yes.
But I also know that as parents, we're observing learning all the time.
Yes.
We're observing our child learning to suckle, learning to crawl, and then somehow we stop observing. So you're saying that we should continue to observe if my child is...
Absolutely.
What can I do at home to continue to observe if learning is happening?
Talk.
And I'm talking to you as a parent now.
Yes.
That, what did you do? Did you know all of this when you were parenting? Were you a specialist in your mind and in your heart when you were parenting?
No. No. I think as parents, we look at our children differently to other children.
Yeah.
You know, as an educator, you in the classroom situation. And so when it comes to your own child, it's important to talk to our children, to find out how they are doing, where are they at, and observe their behaviors. Has my child's behavior changed when he's gone to school or not?
Yeah.
Is he different? Talk to your child about their friends.
Right.
Talk to your child about what happened at school.
Right.
Encourage them to be open with you as a parent, because I found that only when I was able to ask my child every day, how was your day?
Yeah.
What was good about your day? What was not good about your day? Not just what happened.
Yeah.
That is too broad. You need to be specific in your questions.
Right.
And then you start finding out what has happened. And then you can observe if there's something wrong and if there's something that needs to be fixed.
Right.
And listen to your inner instinct. Listen to your inner your inner thoughts and how you feel about what is happening, because often that is what indicates where to go.
This brings me to the special needs question. It is in the talking and listening to your child, noticing behavior changes that you mentioned. What are those special needs? What are the children needing that is considered special? Is it the barriers towards learning that are happening, and what causes it? Where is the need?
It's a very wide spectrum.
Right.
You have children who are physically disabled, that would be in that category.
Right.
Then you have children who are mentally challenged.
Right.
You have children who are on the autistic spectrum.
Right.
Then you have children who are also have experienced trauma in their life.
Right.
And those children with violence or abuse or any kind of trauma that happens in a child, that can block the learning.
Right.
So you have that spectrum of needs that children need to be able to be provided for.
Right.
And that is why you have different schools and you have different educators that are specialized in those different areas.
Right. Right.
So it depends where the block to the learning is happening. Is it a physical block because the child has cerebral palsy? Is it a physical block in terms of the child needing hearing aids because they can't hear?
Yeah.
Or is it a learning block in terms of auditory discrimination? In other words, the child cannot hear the difference between a th and a t.
Yeah.
Or a th and a s. And that needs a different kind of specialization, help, depending on what the child is needing.
It sounds to me like some of the needs are long-term, lifelong, and some are temporary and short-term needs.
Yes.
And talk to us about those short-term. And I've got an example. At some point, I discovered that my daughter wasn't hearing at school. And, at childhood, tests are done before you are discharged from hospital. All along, preschool, she was fine. And I picked it up by seeing her name written wrong on one of the charts. And I asked, and the teacher, said that's what she said. Meanwhile, when I checked, talk to your child, listen to them, when I found out from her, when I asked her, she then told me that she was lip reading. For some time, she had been lip reading. Wow. She wasn't hearing. And I attended to that. We attended to that. And it was a block, but it was short term. You know, of course, there was a damage in her ear and she learned to survive, but there were other things that we continued to do, and she developed some strategies as she was growing up.
Yes.
But it was a short-term process. And when does a short-term challenge like that, you mentioned traumas, you know, another short-term, like if we can address the challenge, we can address the trauma, something in the child can change.
Yes.
What are those short-term challenges that become long-term, or what happens that make them long-term?
There are numerous short-term things that could become long-term.
Yeah.
For instance, a child who doesn't crawl.
Yeah.
One might think, my child's too clever to crawl.
Yeah.
But that can have a long-term effect on their motor skills later on, and their balancing and their midline, and it then goes from left to right, and their writing skills. So a little thing like that could have long-term effects afterwards. You can have, like you mentioned, a bit of trauma that a child has. A child who is in a car when there's a car hijacking experience. If the parent doesn't take that child to play therapy and allow the child to work through that on an emotional and psychological level, that can have that long-term effect, where that fear and that anxiety is impacted in the child's psyche, and they become a fearful person. And that can then be a block to their learning and to being a sociable person, and block to their social development.
Goodness. Jenny, you're touching things that happen every day. Some of these things happen every day. And we tend to say, this happened, but they didn't touch my child. But we actually don't know what the soul of that child saw, the spirit of that child saw in that trauma. And we continue with our lives.
Yes.
I worked as a counselor, Jenny, and I had to see a child, not from a school background. The parent just brought them to, or was talking to me about that, had lost a father, was brought from rural area to urban area and put to school, and I think he was in grade 2. And he became very wild and loud. And so the primary school had a problem with that. He was hyperactive, he was everywhere all the time, and wherever he was, other children were uncomfortable. And another child that I saw at a later stage, his father passed, also a boy, his father passed, and he went into a shell, into himself, and he was just quiet and so on. And then everything, became slower.
Yes.
Now, this happens when your child is already in school and a death has happened and we think the child is fine and we move on. What would you say we are to do? Do we inform the school? Do we wait for the school to tell us that the child is different? You're talking about paying attention and listening.
Yes.
What would you say to that?
It's important that parents see the school as partners with them in parenting. And when a trauma happens, it's important to tell the school immediately, because the teacher in the classroom needs to be aware of what's happened so that she can be that mentor in the classroom, and then also she can then feed back to the parents and say, listen, this child is traumatized in class still.
Yeah.
He's not okay.
Right.
Take him for more therapy, or take him for a different therapy, or whatever, to help him to overcome this and to give him skills to be able to cope again. Because if you keep that kind of information away from the school, they can't help.
Yeah.
And they then judge the child
Yes.
and say he's naughty.
Yeah.
Or he's ADHD,
Yeah.
or whatever they label him,
Yeah.
without understanding what the actual trauma is behind that situation. So it's important to talk to the school immediately when something happens, so that you can both help the child together.
This has been so rich for me, and I hope it is rich for the parents.
I hope so.
Wow, I've learned so much myself, and good thing I'm a granny now. I can just pay a little bit more attention to that without stressing as a parent. But it also means that we have learned so much, and we probably have more questions as parents. And so if you do have questions, send them through so that we can discuss them further. Maybe your questions are more specific, and maybe we can have Jenny again.
That would be lovely. Thank you, Thozi.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Keep safe and keep healthy, social distancing, and loving our children continuously. See you next time, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment.
Thank you for watching. Please check the description box below for more information on the program and how to get hold of us. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to get updates on our future uploads.